What's up, everybody? Welcome to Omnic Lab, episode 116. This is your host, Rob May, coming in from the nice and cool evening at the end of the day here in Japan. And joining me, as always, we have Andres Gomez from Georgia. What's up, Andres?
What's up? What's up? It's also a nice and cool morning over here in Georgia, but it's nice to be back.
How's the coding treating you lately?
Oh my God, let's not even bring that up. I think I mentioned before in the show that I started this data analysis bootcamp. And, we're learning all the tools to gather data and stuff. And one of them is Python. So I've been trying to teach myself a little bit of Python, but I've never really coded in my life. I understand the concepts behind coding, but I'm definitely not there. And some of my classmates are really good. They're already coders in their own right. So they're like leagues ahead of me. I'm just sitting in that class, smashing my head against the desk. But I'm making it through.
It's a little time constricting.
Oh, it's very time constricting trying to teach yourself coding from scratch. Oh my God. I'm not trying to become an expert, but at least acquainted with it, you know?
Yeah. Good old snake jokes at the top of the show. Welcome to Omnic Lab, guys. This is the coding podcast. And no, we're an Overwatch podcast about strategy. This week, we're going to take it easy. We're going to try something a little bit more freeform. As we said before, we're going to try a little bit more reaching out in our own space and trying to get outside of the usual super heavy like strategy feel. We want to try to dip our toes into casual shows and fun shows, as well as more strategic ones and the things like our Carolina Ravassa interview. Speaking of which, our last guest had Carolina on his YouTube channel. So guys, check out Fitzy here on YouTube. And he did an excellent review of Carolina. I actually just rewatched it the other day with my wife. It was a wonderful interview, such that my wife could follow everything that was being said. And it was really funny listening to Carolina like take over the interview and interview Fitzy for a good 20 minutes. I thought that was hilarious.
That is really funny. No, I definitely check it out. It's like top 5 anime crossovers ever, because you got Sombra, voice actress, and Sombra, top 500 player in the latter. Meet.
Yeah. So unfortunately, we did get some sad news from this interview that Carolina will not be at BlizzCon, unfortunately. But we do know that there will be other voice actors there, as per usual with panels. And Andres and I will be there on Thursday evening, is kind of our arrival day. So we'll see you guys there. If you want to see us there, I'm sure we'll have a meetup somewhere in the Hilton or something like that in the evening before, with all of those open areas and whatnot. There we have some news that we're not allowed to mention yet, but we will get that to you when everything is finalized with regards to maybe a meet and greet that has some more details coming. But this week we're going to be talking about the support evolution that has kind of overtaken the new setup within team compositions, especially within ladder play, not so much within the team play that you may be seeing in contenders per se, but I'm sure it will certainly have an overlap, as well as Hammond's introduction to the meta. We don't want to beat a dead horse with Hammond, so we're going to be coming at it from a little bit of a different angle. We're going to talk about hero counters today. We're going to talk about supports kind of jumping in and changing. And then we're also going to be talking through a little bit more of hero counters with relationship to this new setup. So, Andres, before we get in, I think we need to make a couple of announcements. So, why don't you take the Game Night announcement first?
Absolutely. As you guys already know, or if you don't know yet, we hold game nights every month. At the last Friday of every month is usually our time, and the time has come this month. It actually turned out to be, I think, the last day of the month by coincidence. But yeah, it's happening tomorrow night. So if you're listening to this, it's probably already happening as you're listening, or it already happened. But if you don't want to miss any of these announcements, you can always join our Discord channel. Everything is always announced over there. Our mods are very, very on top of those things. Omnic Lab game night channels open up the week that the game night's gonna happen. So if you want to
They're
start
open right
chatting,
now.
yeah, and you want to ask questions, or you want to already start grouping up with some people that are excited and eager for game night, you can already do so. And more importantly, just we love seeing you guys there. People from all levels. We really enjoy playing with you guys, and people really enjoy playing with people in the community. I think it's become quite a tradition now, and we still get questions every month like, "Hey, when is game night? When is game night?" Just because everyone likes it so much.
Additionally, this is not gated by SR, meaning that you can be in any bracket and we'll play you.
That's
So you can
true.
play with anybody you like, any level. If you want to pair with different people, we have kind of a captain's rotation system. Works similar to dodgeball and gym class, except for there will be a limit of how many people can be in your group, and you can
Yeah.
swap out when you want, and you can be super funny and BM the GM players by making sure they don't get to play. It's always fun when they're in the
Or
lobbies
you
and the
get to pick
two.
him first too, like a lot of people
Yeah,
do.
or you can pick them first, which is traditionally the more popular decision from what we've been finding, as the same with gym class. So moving on, we have some sponsors. This week we have Top Score Solutions coming back. He Ben gave us a little bit of an update, so we got some new news from him coming. But for now, if you guys were looking into getting into more of the esports field, or you want to do like coaching, starting team, developing apps and services, all that jazz, you can just look him up at topscoresolutions.com or Topscore Esports on Twitter and find his link to his Discord as well. That's sort of the three locations that you're looking for. And Ben is more than qualified and has been just doing great work there. And I'm sure they're going to be doing some more diversifying things. And sounds like things are staying free, but we'll keep you posted. All right. We also have a new update with Omnic Meta that we mentioned last week, and I believe is doing some data analysis coming out for players that had a soft launch this week. And basically, if you guys have used something like Overbuff or Master Overwatch to like track your stats or something like that, Omnic Meta is rolling out something like that right now. And you can go and look in our Discord for more details, or you can ping him on Twitter at Omnic Meta. That being said, there is one last announcement that we'd love to show you this week, and I'll be sure to put this in the show notes. This is the new spreadsheet for kind of like all of the guests, all of the relevant topics for kind of the backlog archive that maybe age really well, I guess is kind of the way to say. It's not going to include every single Omnic Lab episode, but it's pretty close. And I was able to compile this with some help for suggestions. I was using this for suggestions and then changed the format. We won't show it on stream, and I'll try not to belabor the point so we can get into the topic. But just so you guys know, it's basically got 5 tabs of offense, tanks, and supports for the going deeps, map guides, and then a general topics selection. It's going to tell you who the guests are with a main hyperlink to find them, what their affiliations are, like streamers or Blizzard, or if they're a voice actor or a top 500 player. Those are the type of things that you can find there. And then what the show's topic was or hero. And then if it was a hero guide, it'll tell you if it's been updated for a 2.0 and where that episode is as far as like what the date is of that episode, and a hyperlink to the show notes on the website, as well as the episode number. So you can see all of this, and they all have sorting tabs. So you can sort them by whatever thing you'd like, by hero, by name, by topic, by date, or by number. So this is something that I was compiling today because I thought it would be super useful. We're going to try to integrate this on the website in the short term. So hopefully we can put that on the website soon. But as of right now, that's it.
Yeah, this is a really cool project that Rob kind of like came up with. He was using it to kind of share with people in the community and help us search for new heroes that we want to revisit, or players that would be a good fit for the show. So you guys are interested in this, you can reach us through Discord if you want to help out with it. And yeah, like Rob said, we want to make it a feature in the website because so far we have a pretty big archive of episodes, and a lot of them hold really well over time. Like we were talking about our Tracer episode before the show, and how even we made that one almost a year ago, but the hero itself and the playstyle of Tracer hasn't changed very much at all in the last year. You know, the meta has changed around her, but a lot of the principles of playing her still hold true. So especially episodes like that. We definitely want to keep featuring because they're still very useful, and hopefully keep improving on them.
And the last feature of this is it gives us a tool for us to give an editable link to friends that are close, as well as mods and admin to help us get new suggestions and put them in this list. So if you guys are looking to help us out, you can feel free to send us your suggestions and players, as well as link us their content and help us schedule. We're working on scheduling a Brigitte soon, as well as we actually just locked in a date with CarQ for an Anna update, and that will be coming in September in about 3 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks. So if you're looking for that, you can already start submitting questions in the Discord if you'd like. This is probably the most advanced, in advance thing that we've planned since having our Blizzard employee on the show, which that is also in the works. We're still trying to figure out what exactly it is that we want to interview. Last time it was pretty broad, and they'd like us to be a little bit more specific. So we're going to try to work on that, as well as prepare for our BlizzCon trip. All right, Andres, let's get into the topic here. So basics. So let's start with the supports. We got a major kind of heal beam down for Mercy, right? So her healing is down. Moira got the nerf a little while ago that she still can't heal, or she can't heal through barriers anymore, except through the orbs. Anna had gotten a huge update to her ultimate and has slowly been getting buff iterations on little things like her damage, and then they gave her a bunch more ammo in her clip. And then Zenyatta got a rework for his ultimate, now allows him to reload. Lucio has larger aura and a larger shield on his beat drop. And then Brigitte has been getting nerfs because she's been really, really strong. So what is this kind of translated to, since we've gotten a lot of these slow iteration changes, and then along the way, Brigitte was introduced, as well as Hammond. And then from Brigitte's introduction to Hammond's release, there has been steady notches bringing Brigitte down, bringing Mercy down, and bringing Anna up and Lucio up. And then they also did so much that they cycled Symmetra to be fundamentally outside of this category. So Andres, why don't you talk a little bit more on your kind of thoughts here?
Yeah, it's been quite interesting, all the changes that had been happening over time with supports. I think that, while you're experimenting the changes one by one, a lot of them were very small, basically until the last patch where a lot of supports were changed all at once. It felt like Blizzard was kind of, evading a little bit of the support subject. A lot of people were unhappy with how much Mercy was getting play. But nowadays, it feels like the support category got a whole overhaul in itself. And you can feel that in game. I think that inside of the game, we're seeing a lot less Mercy being the instant pick that you gotta use. And healers like Anna or even Lucio are coming back in a way that you can now play them as your main guys, and it makes sense. We're seeing a lot of more. We're seeing a lot of diversity in here in the healer category, and the options that you can pick, make sense for a lot of different situations. And that's not to say that Mercy's out of the meta either. You still see Mercy, and she's still very useful. You're a main healer guy. How has it felt for you?
It's felt really weird. I feel like a lot of the times when I've been playing, it's not been in a environment where I can even play the hero that I want to play, which is Ana, for the longest time. And then when I do play, it's traditionally in this six stack of friends on the weekend, because nobody plays at dark 30 in the morning when I play on my time, where it's early afternoon. But in general, the supports have felt really good individually. I feel like they're all kind of equivalent consideration, with the kind of exception that you have to be running one of Moira or an Ana at pretty much any given time. And I also feel like in this current meta, or this current setup with how the supports are providing healing, I think this is the most difficult it's been to solo heal since the game's release. To basically run one healer and be okay seems really hard right now. And also, on the flip side of that, this has been the most approachable 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 support comps have been. Ironically.
Yeah, now you have like
Because of
multiple
that.
support comps all over the place. That is true, but it speaks to like the healer status right now that you can get away with running something like that. And I do agree with you right now, or in the past, running a single healer usually involved running a Mercy because she was highly survivable. She can be independent, right?
Passive healing.
She has her passive healing, which makes her quite independent. You don't need to have
Super
somebody else.
durable.
Unlike healers like Anna, for example, which only has one ability on a long cooldown that is extremely useful for your team to heal herself. So basically, she almost
You
requires to have somebody else
Yeah.
beside you to help you out. But
And you're
yeah,
relinquishing one of your major benefits of running the hero, which is the
Right,
grenade.
exactly. If you're only
Yeah.
using it to heal yourself individually and nothing else, you're probably not using it to its full potential.
Correct.
So yeah, that's why you kind of want to babysit it with her. Same like heroes like Zenyatta, heroes that are very vulnerable and don't have any escape mechanics beside transcendence, maybe. But again, a huge cooldown. Then you don't want to just use it to avoid a Genji. Um,
Right.
so again, there's another healer that needs kind of like a babysitter. But yeah, Mercy's pretty independent in that sense. And before the patch, she had the highest output of healing in a very consistent ability, right? Her right click could just heal loads of health, no problem, which actually played a certain way. You could run Mercy as a single healer and be okay. Plus, she can resurrect people. So, if anyone else dies, she has a
Mm.
get back over here card, no problem.
Mm.
But in this patch, it does seem to be not quite the case because, like you said, her healing got toned down a little bit, and now running Mercy alone does feel like your team is choking a little bit. It's not getting enough healing. The pressure starts mounting
Mhm.
up, and Mercy just can't keep up all on her own. Surely your team could adapt playstyle wise, but
Right.
it's not as optimal anymore.
So, Andres, let me run something by you and see what you think about this because I was trying to like thinking that it might be helpful for some of our players out there to kind of categorize. Again, this is general consensus, not necessarily a hard and fast rule of like categorizing your supports into categories like off healing and main healing. I felt like you can't really put that on the supports anymore because you're almost always required to have two. Having something as a primary and an off doesn't really do it for you anymore. You know what I mean? Like you kind of just need to have two at all times anyways. And it's not really bad to run the quote unquote um Lucio Brigitte or Brigitte Zen or Zen Lucio is not necessarily ideal, but it's also pretty compositionally dependent or countering dependent. And then on top of that, the next thing that I wanted to run by you was Mercy and Moira feel both like a medium, I guess you could say, sustain healing style instead of like off healer, main healer. And then you have like this burst thing that's going on now. So like Ana and Brigitte, they fit that burst category. Zenyatta is like a damage utility. Lucio is like a flex utility. And then Moira is a high sustained healing close range. And Mercy is like a high sustained damage utility. And then like kind of like a medium extra stuff, right? Like the healing's okay. It's not quite as good as Moira, but you can just always have it. You have the res, you have the damage boost. You're basically helping the ultimate economy of your entire team if you're playing properly. But this is kind of like where I'm kind of camping heroes and like how you choose them, right? Like this is what's running through my mind when I'm trying to choose a support looking
Yeah,
at
yeah,
my
yeah.
team.
I think it's a really good way to look at the game. You know, if you're trying to look at each hero for what he can bring into the battlefield and how he can interact with it, it's a really good starting point. I think that you can definitely categorize the healers a little bit. Like you said, right now the lines are a little more blurred, and I agree with that. It feels like you can run more duo healer compositions than ever before. Like
Yeah.
you can run Lucio Zen, or maybe like Zen Mercy, or Anna Lucio, or Anna Brigitte. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And the list goes on. You can really mix and match them as your team needs and the purpose that you're trying to
Right.
do. I think that you can still have like two broad categories of like main healers and off healers. They're a little more mixed nowadays, but I think that you can still put Mercy, Anna, and Moira into that main healer category. And I simply say that is because a lot of their skills and the baseline around the hero is really concentrated on outputting a massive amount of healing. um, and they have tools to just do, like you said, like this kind of like burst healing and be outputting all the time. The other healers, more like Zen, Brigitte, um, and who am I missing here? Lucio.
Lucio.
Yes, those three are a little more limited in how much they can heal over time. Brigitte has a burst heal on a cooldown, which makes it not entirely reliable. And then her next heal is a very passive, very slow kind of heal, which is great when your team is getting chip damage, but not as great when you need to top off like a Reinhardt, for example. Lucio is kind of
Mm-hmm.
like in the same boat, and Zenyatta in the same boat, where their healing is very passive, very slow. You can't really quite control it too much, except for
It's
using
more
one
of
of
a
your
durability
cooldowns.
thing rather than a heal.
Yeah, but what they bring instead is some awesome utility tools that your team
Mm-hmm.
can definitely take advantage of. Lucio's bringing the speed boost. Zenyatta is bringing a lot of damage on offensive abilities with him, plus Discord Orb, which translates into even more damage for your team. Um, and then you have Brigitte having a stun, having a shield, having the whip, which makes it very valuable to have in your backline to protect whoever you're trying to protect back there. So I think it's a trade off, right? With one set of healers, the main healers, you're taking them for their ability to heal. The other ones, you're sacrificing a little bit of healing for a lot of utility in a certain area. Why you want to pick him really depends on what you're trying to do, and I think that's how you should try to think about healers in this meta right now. What if you need a main healer? If you're gonna need a lot of healing, right? Maybe the other heroes that you're playing with don't have a lot of like self-sustain abilities. If you're playing with a Reinhardt, a Zarya, you're playing with maybe McCree, you're playing with a Pharah, for example, or even a Genji, heroes that might need you to have some healing on them, or they might die. Very important to have a main healer that can do that. If you're playing with heroes that are very self-sustainable, like Roadhog, Soldier, Tracer, Sombra comes to mind. These heroes that can generally just survive on their own, you might be a little bit more free to pick something else. What do you think about this?
I tend to agree. I also would like to kind of like extend this into considerations that revolve around your team as well as what's shaking out to be kind of team synergies, whether it be like actualized theory or whether it be something that's going on in the game that the theory is just kind of breaking down and you're just not performing or executing. And on top of that, you also have running two main healers, quote unquote, right? Within this broad brushstroke is totally fine because what you can do is you can basically run a Mercy and an Ana side by side in this example as main healers, right? But as long as you can kind of mentally check in with your other healer or verbally check in with them, depending on if you're going to stay in or out of voice chat, that your Mercy understands that in this role with this setup, they're going to be the ones that is going to be the primary healing source for all of the DPS. because they're the one that has the flexibility of moving around. They can kind of just move together. Now, the only exception to this, I think, would be if you've got like a flanker that you can just dive and pocket, or you've got something like a Pharah setup that you're just going to be continually staying with, and then Ana just covers the rest. And the reason for this is that Mercy, while Ana does a I guess you could say a better job at burst healing and sustained healing the team, Ana's job is basically to farm the ultimate super quickly and get you an engagement tool, as well as making sure that every single grenade is an offensive capability for the team instead of just something that is sometimes used for the team and sometimes used for an engage. When you're running a Mercy, you basically have the flexibility kind of go out the window, and Ana needs to be a little bit more offensively minded, and she can kind of take a little bit of a break and focus on some chip damage or finishing things off, whereas she wouldn't normally be able to take those risks in a high damage incurring situation.
I like this comparison between Mercy and Anna because them two are really strong main healers right now. And I think that there's a right and wrong situation to maybe take him. Like you said, Anna is a great healer for the front line. You know, she can really give you tools to advance that front line, get really aggressive. The grenade is an incredible tool to not only heal your Reinhardt or whoever you have up there, but also put a lot of pressure on the enemy team. If you can land like the nade on the Reinhardt and the enemy Reinhardt or the enemy tank or front line, it's basically a green light for your main tank, right? Like, ooh, this is time to go. I can get healed a lot. They can't get healed. Let's go. Also, Nano Boost, incredible tool for just giving somebody the ability to just rush in there and like build some space. And now a great defensive tool too, right? If your tank is about to die, or even any of your DPS or healers, you can now nano boost them to give him an incredible amount of survivability and health. Mercy, on the other hand, not as powerful to give your front line that boost, but you trade that off with a huge amount of mobility, which makes it great, like you said, with heroes like Pharah, which Anna might have a harder time keeping up with, right? If Pharah is way above in the sky, going through buildings, now Anna has to take care of two different angles, your Pharah and your front line, or whoever is trying to advance through. Well, Mercy can just kind of follow the Pharah and give him a huge burst ability, keep her alive for a really long time, and gain ultimates together. I think that for really mobile comps where maybe line of sight is gonna be more of a luxury, Mercy is still very useful. But if you're trying to advance more of a ground composition, you have that front line, you have a Reinhardt, you have an Orisa. Anna is looking really appealing nowadays.
You also have like a lot of these other factors where you kind of just need to sit down and understand that supports are kind of fundamentally a little different when you're choosing them than when you're choosing like a DPS or a tank. You're choosing a tank because this is like how the pace is going to be set. How are you going to move? How are you going to engage? How are you going to disengage? How are you going to maintain where the team can move, right? The enablers. Then you have the it doesn't mean that other players can't necessarily do them, but we can basically just say that the entire pace of the speed of fights and when things start shaking out, tanks are usually the ones that are,
Oh, absolutely.
first there.
I
Then
mean,
you have DPS, which
theoretically, yes.
Yeah, theoretically. And then you have the DPS, which are the ones that are kind of getting the stuff done. And I don't mean this by saying if stuff's not happening that it's their fault. It just means that when somebody on the team needs to stand on their head and do something crazy and win the game, it's generally them. Because you can kind of do that on other things and not really have as much of a immediate feedback for your impact as much as a DPS can, which means they're dead and you're not. Okay? So that's kind of the main thing there. And they're the flashy ones. And then the supports are more of like when you're performing, you're basically making sure that when your team's making mistakes, they're not getting super punished for it. And when your team is performing well, that you're making sure that they can continue to do that. Okay? And then your other job is just making sure to not die. Okay? But when you're playing
The support
these
is
other
like your
heroes.
ammunition, right? Like your sustain. How long can your team keep doing what they're doing while heavy under fire, under pressure? Um, those are
I
you're
feel
the
like,
guys who like give him that push, the fuel. You know what I mean?
yeah. And I know that, Andres, we talk a lot about this in our Going Deeps, where we choose DPS heroes based off of either comfort, this is like who you play, but then when you start getting into the hero counters and the 1v1s, you understand like who you're weak against and who you're strong against. And sometimes they're tanks and other times they're not. But like more often than not, the functionality of if you can win or lose a 1v1 changes drastically when you start introducing all of the other factors, like what are the supports behind you, what are the tanks in front of you, how does the DPS and the tank kind of readjust to their playstyle depending on what supports the enemy team has and what supports you have. And it's not just supports, but as a support player, all I can think of is hero counters when I'm looking at supports. And it's really weird, but like when I'm playing the game, I'm like, okay, the enemy team is running a Moira. Moira's basically just, you guys have to understand, I don't like Moira in any of the comps right now because of anything that has to do with barriers just shuts her down, like entirely. She feels very useless with how much popularity Anna's been getting at my plat games and above, and some of the diamonds that I've been getting on my teams. It's just like Moira just doesn't do enough because every time people go purple, everything's dead, and then Moira's useless.
Moira,
And you
Moira
have,
definitely has her uses. I think that maybe out of the main healers, she's the least popular right now. But I do still see her
yeah,
in my games, and you see her with some compositions, especially compositions like triple tank, for example. She can be quite good if you need to be on the move and be able to heal a large amount of bodies around you.
sure.
She can really shine in there. Coalescence shines for that too. A little more limited into where you can use it and be the most effective. But I think that depending on the composition, she has a place in it. But I do agree that Anna and maybe Mercy tend to be a little more popular in the overall.
And it's just that when we go back and try to define like what these heroes are doing, Moira's kind of definition is just like making things a little bit more durable, kind of across the board. And by a little bit, I mean a lot, because Moira has like some of the craziest healing group output that you can have with like a really low, kind of like a playstyle, like adjustment that you have to make. You just like group up, right? And
I,
then everything is just getting healed.
Another thing to consider too is that Moira, unlike Anna, for example, has a lot of mobility and has a lot of ways to get out of trouble. You know, her
Mm,
fade does get her out of things like graviton, for example, or any
mm-hmm.
dangerous situation you might be. Moira is a little more self-reliant in that way, and especially if you're hitting the ladder, if you're not playing with a team, you might find yourself playing Anna and not having that support, right? Maybe you don't have that second healer with you that might be helping you out. Or maybe you do have a second healer, but they're not really paying a lot of attention to you. They might be
Yeah.
more interested in chasing the Genji down with their Brigida. Um, and
Now,
you find yourself getting dove constantly, and Anna maybe not able to survive. It's a
what I will
consideration.
say, what I will say though is that one place, a couple places where Moira shines is when teams really struggle and you just need to move a little space. Like you need to move on 2CP or on hybrid map. You need to go into the zone. You need to stay there. Moira makes sure that you guys get into a place and you don't die getting there, and you don't die when you do get there. It's really hard to get rid of you. And not just Moira. It's really hard to get rid of anyone because you're basically holding down the fort in this small zone. You just run a bunch of fat tanks that have lots of fat health bars and you keep them alive. That's kind of what you do. Now that that being said, what Moira does really well, everything else that she doesn't do means that not only does she not do it well, she just doesn't have it. And what I mean by that is that she doesn't have any utility. Her entire utility is healing and surviving herself, right?
Yeah.
So she's really mobile. She's really good at healing. That's what she does. And she kind of has like these weird chip heals or weird chip damage aspects to her kit, but they're more or less a distraction and kind of just how you maintain your heal. They're not really enablement. It's not like Zenyatta crazy damage. It's not like shutting off heals with Ana, enabling a teammate to have this crazy damage output and durability and a heal, as well as sleep darting somebody and removing them completely from the fight. You have Mercy, who has this capability of giving herself and an ally this incredible boost to generating their ultimate faster. And then when she gets her ultimate, basically just having Orissa's ultimate on top of that, plus a heal when she needs to for the group. So
I do agree
there's
with
so
that.
many different utilities that you can get.
Yeah, with
outside of
Mora,
Moira.
you're a little more limited on that, on the utility aspect. You just get some massive, kind of like localized heals, right? And you can heal a lot of people at the same time as long as they're close by. Um, so that is her strength, and then that is why she shines in compositions like triple tank, triple support, where you meet
Yeah,
those conditions, right? You have big
you do.
bodies around you that need a lot of health. You're gonna be in the thick of the battle, so you need some utility to keep yourself alive and avoid some damage, which Mora does have with herself. But yeah, then like you said, when those conditions are not met, she does feel a little bit less effective, just because she's missing a lot of the other tools that some of the other healers do bring. And in those situations, those tend to be valued a little more. No nano boost, being able to use the grenade or sleep dart are incredibly useful in certain situations.
So we talked a lot about the main three big
Yeah.
heavy hitters when it comes to healing. So let's go into picking the other three and why. So, what are the scenarios where you're picking Brigitte now that she's more or less balanced? And some people are gonna disagree with that, but I feel like steadily she's been getting more and more balanced, and I think we'll get her there eventually. But Brigitte has the armor, the durability ultimate with rally. She's got the burst heal that's over heals with armor. She also has the slight on a cooldown kind of repositioning high damage output with her whip shot, and then kind of the slow and steady healing aspect that she can get in brawly fights. Then you have Lucio, who has arguably the number one utility of anything, which is movement. In a game like Overwatch, movement is king, and getting able to reposition fast and also control a little bit of what your enemy team is able to position with your boop or your shotgun shot is really, really strong. And in addition, Lucio himself has a lot of survivability built in. And then you have Zenyatta, which is the frag machine, not just for himself, but for his allies. Basically, just giving, if you want something to die and you have anything else on your team that's helping you do that, whether it be a Lucio to help you position there, a Brigitte to stun it, a Mercy to give you more damage, or even a Ana to either sleep dart or purple them to make sure they can't get any heals. Zenyatta provides the secondary buff that helps you just finish things instantaneously. So these are the utilities that we have in the off support category. Andres, what is it that we're looking at when we're considering choosing these?
I think that like you said, each of them has their different strengths, and like you said, look at your composition and what is it that it needs. We're talking about triple tank, triple support a second ago. We said we need a massive amount of heals, people that can move in with them and be in the thick of thin. Turns out Lucio can be also really effective for this composition. Why? He has an area of effect heal, which you can just turn on and be healing everyone passively at the right time. But more importantly, because you're running three tanks, you're a little limited on your mobility, right? You're just moving three huge bodies around the battlefield. So being able to close the gap as fast as you can with this composition turns out to be of critical importance. Being able to just move up to the point and fight from the point where that composition wants to be. Um, it's like the one of the most important parts of the thing, and that's what is Lucio so desired. He brings that, and no other hero can give you that. Like, let's go speed boost. We move from point A to point B in less time. If the opponent team or the opponents don't react fast enough, we just crash against them and mow them down on our way to our destination. Quite important here. Um, Likewise, with compositions that require a lot of mobility, like dive, Lucio can be a huge asset, being able to allow your Genji and your Winston to close the gap fast, get on their target, finish them off, and then scatter out of there as fast as possible. Can be incredibly useful. Have you played much Lucio? You've been playing a lot of Lucio.
Honestly, Lucio has been, since the support changes, Lucio's the one hero I've played the most. And it's really weird to say that because Lucio has historically not been my best support. He's actually been my worst, including Zenyatta. Even though my win rate has been a little bit better on Lucio, my deaths per 10 has been the worst on that hero of all of them. And the reason is because like I play Lucio like I play Tracer and Genji, and not how I play like a Reinhardt or a Mercy supporting in the back line. And it's really difficult to play it, but I've been learning by playing with Deathblow and Yankee, who are really, really good players and players that play around Lucio's position. Traditionally, Deathblow plays super aggro when he's on tank, but then when he's playing something else like a DPS, he kind of goes with a different style, and I have to kind of like readjust when he's not playing tank. So it's really interesting, but Lucio has this really odd thing where I remember talking with Rami on our Revisited episode, and she was saying that basically anytime you're using Lucio, you have to understand that your damage output is about the same as Genji's if your shotgun's up. And it doesn't have the same burst window, but it's slower damage, but it is the same kind of rotation, has the same damage output, including a melee with your primary fire and your secondary fire, and then another primary fire. You can kill pretty much anything that's 200 HP. You just got to know your combos. And so with that being said, Lucio enables, like Andres, you were saying, you have big targets like Reinhardt, Orisa, Roadhog, massive, huge units that are extremely deadly when they get any sort of speed. And then if you can boost that even to triple the speed, then they become super scary. Having a Roadhog round 2 corners, whip around, and throw a hook, that is just one of the most terrifying things you can do. And then what we've been doing on Koth maps, or Control the Hill, or King of the Hill, sorry, and Control, we would just run like 2 or 3 heroes that just have some form of repositioning tool. And Lucio fits that because he has the way that he can move people around. You have a repositioning tool with Pharaohs. You have a repositioning tool with Junkrats and with Orisas. And basically, Lucio on Koth maps where there's any sort of environmental damage that you can do by killing somebody with an environment kill, Lucio's value goes up astronomically.
Oh, for sure. I'm glad you brought that up because the speed boost is not the only valuable thing about his kit. The area of effect style is very useful in certain compositions. You just have to be around him to get the effect out of him. And the boop is such a huge tool in those maps that have a precipice, right? That you can just boop people off the map. Because think about it, with just a single ability on like a 3-second cooldown or whatever it is that it is, 4 seconds. Okay. Simple ability. You can take down an entire 600 HP tank right out of the bat. Like there's no ability in the game that will do that except if you can just boop him out. You suddenly have bought your team so much damage and pressure in a second. And that is super invaluable and definitely not something that every hero can do, especially not in the support category. I think only Brigitte and Lucio are able to do this in this category. And the thing about Lucio is that because of your wall riding ability, you can actually reposition yourself to get these hard angles to boop people off of the map as needed.
And if you fall off or get booped, you have a much better recovery than any other hero.
Yeah, you can actually come back. Yeah.
And the other thing about this is that not only can you do these things, But the fact that you exist on Lucio, you actually are now presenting that as a threat that the enemy team has to play around, and if they don't, they get punished. And if they do, you have the threat by which you can funnel them into certain positions that you're eliminating other approaches or other ways that they can fight you
Hmm.
because you exist. It's the same thing if you play Pharah on Lijiang Tower and you're in the night market. Or not in the night market, you're in the garden. And you're approaching the point, you're like, I'm not going to get booped. And then they get a 3K because you got booped. Right?
Now, it
So
is it
it
is worth
happens.
it is worth noting though that Lucio sounds great as we're talking about him right now. Like, oh my god, this guy has mobility, this guy has speed boost, he can area of
Yeah.
effect heal. But you do gotta understand, Lucio really struggles keeping up a lot of people alive if they're taking heavy damage. If there's a lot of people in your team, especially that are not necessarily standing really close to you, taking heavy damage, is really hard for you to keep them all up. You really have
Mm-hmm.
one a very small amount of heals unless you boost them with your ability, and you're like in an area, right? So if your team just happens to be spread out in two different positions, you have to choose like which one do you heal. Most of the time people end up coming to you, but again, it's like it's a weakness that he has. And more importantly, if you're boosting your heal constantly, it means that you're likely not using things like your speed boost, and you're kind of missing out a little bit on the full strength of the hero. So I think that is why running Lucio with another healer, a main healer sometimes that can cover that weakness for him, is ideal. Because if you have somebody like a Mercy or a Nana taking care of all of the heavy heals, then it frees you up to actually do what Lucio does best, which is speed boosting your team to close the gap as needed, maybe riding around the battlefield and getting a couple of cheeky boops out of there. But if you don't have that freedom to kind of like venture out a little bit, or maybe go with your flanker for a tad, or your team will die, then you won't be able to shine as much as Lucio. So something to keep in mind, and why we also kind of categorize him as that off healer category.
Now, to kind of keep the train going here, because you're going to be seeing a lot of Lucio out there, is to realize that what Anders and I have been talking about is kind of the flashy plays that you kind of anticipate and the biggest threats that these heroes have. But again, Lucio can make a 4-second cooldown that no longer requires you to use your ammunition, which is a buff that he got somewhere along the lines, as a major kit point. Meaning that any ability in Overwatch that you can use for a specific purpose means that it can have multi-use. It doesn't have to have that linear one thing that it does, unless it just says healing, right? Like that, you have a flat thing that you can do for healing or a flat thing you can do with damage, but how you use it can significantly change things. For example, you can use your boop basically to go in front of or in behind a Reinhardt on the enemy team as your team is speed boosting through their barrier, boop him straight up in the air, and then shatter underneath of it for your team. You can do things like this. You can do stuff where if their enemy team Reinhardt's engaging and he's going to dash and he's actually going to charge your Reinhardt, you can boop him to the left or right and screw up his charge and make him a sitting duck. You can boop enemy team into you. If you're getting attacked, you can boop to get people away from your enemy, your allied healer. You can use your speed to make sure that you provide utility that your healer, aka an Ana, doesn't have. You can use a weakness that Lucio has and shore it up by adding an Ana into the mix. And what I mean by that is if a grenade is used and it hits enemies and allies in the same area, Lucio can use his speed to get into the area, swap to heals, and boost his healing. And he can heal people with a boosted heal that it's not just self-boosted, but also boosted by the Ana grenade that gives you bonus healing. A lot of people don't understand this that don't play supports, is that the bonus healing that Ana provides is not just a block on enemy teams purpling you, but also a boost for Ana's healing and all allies. So if I'm playing Lucio, Mercy, Moira, Brigitte, or Zenyatta, all of those healers can benefit from the side effects of that grenade. And so this is how you can get Lucio's their ultimates much faster by playing Ana.
Yeah, yeah, definitely a lot of synergy with the main healers. Let's talk a little bit about Brigitte, because she heals in a similar way to Lucio, kind of like in a area of effect around her, except that she has this huge burst heal in her kit that also gives armor. Basically, it's a great way to neglect burst damage. If somebody dives her and does a ton of damage to her, I mean not to her but to an ally, she can quickly be like, "I got you." She's not relying on shooting a bunch of darts into a target or holding your healing beam on them for a while. She's a one time, let me heal you right now. It's a great countering tool for those like big spikes in damage. And not only that, but her kit is designed to kind of stop that kind of behavior, right? The let's dive in quick, kill as quick as we can, dive back out, kind of bursty, spiky kind of composition. She's designed to stop that a little bit. She has the shield, she has a stun, she has a whip that moves people away from her or an ally, and that super burst heal. Aside from that, her healing is not super strong unless her ultimate is activated. You can quickly damage through it if you have consistent damage. But what makes her really like useful right now in this meta and why some people despise her is because she makes your backline or your front line incredibly resilient. It's just hard at getting near a Brigitte, right? You're gonna be met with stuns, you're gonna be met with flails all over your head. She has a shield. She's not necessarily easy to damage either. Even if you keep your range, she has a way to kind of stop all of that damage and then buy her enough time to go around the corner and line of sight you or something. But makes her incredibly strong defending heroes like Anna or Zenyatta, defending heroes like McCree, Widowmakers, heroes that might stand in the back line of your team, and people might want to dive him. She's incredibly adept at protecting those heroes. Have you had much a chance to play Brigitte? I don't think I've seen you too much with Brigitte.
I haven't been playing her except for specific scenarios where we need to, like you said, we need to protect our back line or we need to engage with our front line. And we're struggling in any one of those. Or they're just running flankers and a Winston. And something needs to die. So usually what we do is if we're on and struggling and a Winston's present or a Tracer or a Genji, we make sure we wait till they dive and we kill them. Because Brigitte makes sure that if they're gonna dive, they're gonna get punished. And and they're gonna make sure that that is one target. So you have to really pick your targets wisely, and you can't miss your stun because your window is only, I think it's 8 seconds now on the cooldown. They've adjusted it like twice.
Yeah,
now,
they've changed
so
it. Yeah,
I'm guessing it's 8. The other thing that you can do is not like this is something that I had to learn over time, and it maybe have been super obvious for much better players than I, which there are plenty of them. But when you play Brigitte and you're using your team composition, you're basically using your E ability on PC or your armor pack, sorry. You're throwing your armor pack every single time it's up like you have an on a rifle that only has one shot every 6 seconds. That's kind of how you want to look at that ability. Is if you are not using your E ability or you're not using your armor pack and using it on cooldown with somebody who needs healing, whether it overheals or not, it doesn't matter because if you're in the middle of a fight, they're getting temporary armor that's equivalent to the heal. And they're going to be durable for the next duration of the ability until it goes back off cooldown and you can use it again. So if you're not using that ability regularly, you're losing more than half of your kit because that is bread and butter as much as your damage and as much as your protection. Furthermore, when you're using Brigitte in your style, you have to be able to flip-flop when you're going to use your stun, whether you're going to wait to use it within 3 seconds or whether you're going to engage to use it for 3 seconds or so. I would say that's kind of your wiggle room because if you're not using the stun with how fast this cooldown is, even though it's like 8 seconds, the idea of Brigitte's strength is in the stun and in the health pack. Those are the two core abilities that she has. And if you're not using them, it's really hard for your team to take advantage of it. So you need to either use it as engagement or use it as protection. And you got to use them constantly.
Yeah. Also, one thing to note about Brigitte is that Yeah, she's very strong at protecting. She makes it really hard for Genji's tracers, Winston's to just dive in there and do whatever they want. She was designed to counter this kind of thing, but her main weakness is that she only shines if there's people to protect, and your composition that you're running, it's sort of static. Because to be fair, Brigitte lacks a lot of mobility. She doesn't have
And
any
range.
vertical movement, no range. So if nobody is really around you to protect, your utility goes way down the drain, and you actually become quite vulnerable, right? If you're just alone there. Um, Compositions like dive compositions, especially on maps that have a lot of verticality, a lot of movement in that sense, don't favor Brigida. Maps like Dorado Point 2, maps like Gibraltar Point 2, or even Point 1, you can sometimes get away with her because she's on the payload, but a lot of people like running dive compositions or pharmacies or heroes that can really take advantage of that verticality in those maps. And they tend to leave Brigitte behind. You're not gonna be able to follow your Winston, your Genji, your Tracer, your Diva if she's running away from you. You are more in line with playing with a Reinhardt, an Orisa, a Zenyatta, or an Nana in your backline. You want those sort of compositions to really favor your playstyle, right? If you have Brigitte that constantly has to go up the stairs just to catch up with your team, you might be wasting a lot of time just, repositioning yourself. She's not strong at these things, especially
She's
on
really good
attack.
at Koth.
Yeah,
She's really good at some Koth maps, yeah.
she's quite good at. I was about to say that she's quite good at maps that require your team to be standing on objectives or near objectives, since the battle will revolve in a smaller space, and one of the teams is already forced to engage you in a certain way. But on maps that don't require as much of this, she tends to fall out of favor a little bit.
The nice thing too that you can kind of look at is like with all of the heroes is utility or style of healing. And from what I've been gathering, it's really good to have like one kind of in the burst category, or at least have something of burst, and kind of the other to not. And the only exception to the rule would be Zenyatta, because Zenyatta just has kind of a little bit of both and has his own damage source on top of that. So Zenyatta is just basically a support glass cannon that if you can keep him alive and maintain a protection or a ranged style of engagement or sustainability or a defensive position as a defending team, Zenyatta is really, really hard to break unless they just go straight for him. So if you're playing a style like Brigitte and you're or sorry, the enemy team's running like a Brigitte and a Moira, they're just super durable in the back. Maybe consider just running Ana and Zenyatta, making sure that anything is just that's getting healing is just gonna get it shut off. And anytime you have some target that's coming slowly at you, you're just firing incessant damage with your Zenyatta until it breaks the barrier, and then you throw some more damage in it with an orb. Zenyatta is a great, great tool for a lot of these things. And if somebody's like out of position by a little bit, you can run double snipers and you just basically play the range, and you're basically just like zoning this entire large area out by where you're standing rather than where you are physically, if that makes
Yeah,
sense.
Zenyatta
Like
is
the
a
angles that you have.
Zenyatta's a really interesting off healer because,
It's like an
like you
X
said,
factor.
like he doesn't bring like some crazy utility like Brigitte or Zen does. What he brings in utility is extra offensive capabilities, right? He is able to make opponents weaker so that your team has an easier time dealing with them, and he brings a package of damage with himself. Those orbs deal so much damage, and they're great like spam damage too, just to constantly be throwing it out there and being a nuisance to the enemy team. Plus they hit super hard. If you get used to landing headshots with Zenyatta, man, you can really take down a lot of heroes really fast. He has a couple of features that make him really interesting. One, his clip size is huge. He has no damage fall off, and he can really stand really far away and still be quite effective with the damage. Two, his healing is particularly good on heroes that are a little squishy. Genji, Tracer, Widowmaker, Pharah, McCree. Any of these heroes that have low health pools and tend to be targets often, because you want to take him out as fast as you can. His healing orb is super super effective on those heroes because one those players are usually used to dodging as much damage as they can because a lot of damage is coming towards them, and just having that healing orb on them gives them the ability to keep doing what they need to do consistently and have like that little padding that they're not alone. And the orb being able to constantly be on them is huge because a lot of that chip damage gets erased quite quick. And because the health pools of those heroes are so shallow, being topped off all the time is quite important for them. That orb can
Something
really
really
provide
cool.
value.
Something cool to build off of what Andres is saying here with Zen is that a lot of people really like the pharmacy thing. They're always like, if we're running a far, we should run Mercy, right? Because you get the damage boost is constant. When we do take damage, we can get healed up. We have a dual threat. We can flank together, etc., right? But if you're running that, why not run or at least consider a Zenyatta with a Pharah? Because it's a lot lower maintenance with the same type of effect. They both have the line of sight issues where it not necessarily an issue with it being framed in such of a bad way, but more of a good thing. The line of sight things that happen with their heals is that if something leaves line of sight, it kind of floats for about a second and a half before it dissipates. Both
Hmm.
the healing orb, the discord orb, and the healing and the damage beams. All of these abide by this rule, a little bit of wiggle room. So you can kind of abuse cover. You can kind of say, I'm going to maintain cover of my Pharah up here, and I'm going to peak cover with my volleys every once in a while and make sure I can maintain that orb without having to reapply it all the time.
Right. I think it's more than a second and a half. I think it's like 3 seconds or something like that. It gives you some
Yeah, I
time.
think it's a little longer for the orbs than it actually is for Mercy's beams, to be
Hmm.
honest. And what's really interesting is it's kind of the same concept, just a slight adjustment. Instead of every shot that Pharah is doing getting boosted, it's just every time Pharah is actually hitting a target with Discord, it's getting boosted. So it's still similar in that it's the same flat damage buff if they're hitting the same target. But if they're switching targets constantly, then maybe you want to consider like just getting the splash damage all the time with Mercy and getting multiple targets. That's why that's a little bit better. But if you're running the utility and your team really wants to run a Pharah, but you really don't think it's that great of an idea to run a Mercy, you can actually provide the burst damage from a different side by using the damage yourself. So you're trading off all of this damage that you get from Pharah on a bunch of sources to one source by having yourself providing the damage through your volleys and your regular primary fire.
Absolutely. And Zenyatta brings so much value in like the amount of damage that it can put out. We've seen some of the top sins out there. Like if you look at Jonak, for example, he kind of taught everyone how powerful a Zen can be. He was almost considered a third DPS inside of his team. Another thing
They
that
just ran a
people
Mercy inside of that. They were just saying, "Look, we're gonna put Mercy and make sure that he always has his ultimate."
Yeah, yeah. And he would kill so many people with Zenyatta, and that's something that you can do. You can really be the almost the
The carry.
carry in your team
Yeah.
with Zenyatta because of his capabilities. Another feature that Zenyatta has that no other hero in the game has, and that often gets overlooked, is that he is completely silent. He can move around the battlefield without making a sound, and you don't understand how valuable that is until Azanyata comes around the corner and volleys you, and you had
Just
no
blasts
idea,
you.
they were there.
Well, you can hear the charging of the volley, but if they come around and like throw two orbs and you're dead at your head, then yeah, I can see that.
it's happened to me a few times, especially after Jonak has popularized this kind of thing, because he did it often.
Mm,
He would flank with Zenyatta, because one, nobody expects Zenyatta to flank, and two, you make no sound, so you're actually like the dream of a flanker. You know what I mean? You are very very vulnerable though. So if you are gonna try flanking as Zenyatta, make sure that you have enough range between you and the enemy. Also, make sure that You know how to aim
It's
with
Transcendence
Zenyatta.
time.
Yeah, you have as an escape route or something. It's not
Yeah.
advisable, but you can do it because honestly, you can't. They can't hear you. They don't know you're coming.
And just to kind of wrap up here, guys, if you're considering any of the heroes that are in the pool, look at your team first. Try to do your best to do what supports do, which is enable your team. The next thing that you can look at in the tier list of priorities is if your team is struggling or you are struggling, you need to start looking into the categories of disrupting what the enemy team is doing. If they're running a Moira and you guys are doing fine and you're enabling the team fine, it may not be about you doing your job well. It may be more about they're doing what we're doing well. It's just that on paper or even in this moment, they're able to do it at the same if two teams kind of meet up and the compositions are different and you're both playing even, sometimes you flat out just lose. So you maybe need to just switch something up and change it out, whether it be with your play style, like Andres said with Zenyatta, or maybe it's a fundamental change in the hero that you just want to try. We've done this so many times where it's just like I've been playing Koth, I was playing Lucio a lot, and I'm like, look, they're just getting so much safety behind this diva and denying heals with this Winston. I'm just gonna play Brigitte and we're gonna delete one of them that comes near us. They're gonna basically get rid of the defense matrix, get rid of the Winston bubble, and make sure that my Anna can heal my team. That type of a thing. Or if they're running a tracer, just she needs to die and we need to cap the point and she just can't get any more stall. So we run a Brigitte, get the stun, kill her, remove the problem, right? Or maybe your team is really struggling getting through a choke. We're going to play Lucio and Moira. We're going to heal everyone and we're going to go real fast.
Yeah, I think it's a great way to look at how to pick heroes in general, and specifically for supports is a great way to kind of like narrow it down even further, right? Like think about all the strengths and weaknesses of the heroes, what their kit might bring, if the kit makes sense for what your team is trying to do, and if the kit maybe has tools to maybe help you deal with what the enemy team is trying to do. And honestly, at this point, like we said at the beginning of the show, there's so many compositions that you can pick. Overwatch has always been a game that has tried to emphasize, being able to switch, variety, this sort of thing. And right now we actually are in a meta that has a lot of variety, a lot of different things can work depending on the map layout, depending on what the enemy team is running, depending on what your team is good at or wants to try in that particular moment. And if you're a support player, I think it's a really great time for you. You have a lot of options. And honestly, with DPS and tanks too, but just try to think of what your team is trying to do and if you are matching that with the abilities of the hero you're picking.
Absolutely. If you guys are considering doing any more with Overwatch, you can consider checking us out on all of our social medias. You can follow us on Twitter. You can find us on Patreon and support us that way. And speaking of Patreon, we have some people to thank for this episode. So this week we have our Diamond patrons, which are those of you listeners out there that are supporting us at the highest level on our Patreon. And those people are Ben K, Britmus, Christoplaya, Durandal, Jan Jankel, Lissum, Mr. Mars, Roger B, Ricky Tiki Shazir, Terry F, Top Score Solutions, and Tragic Zach. While I was trying to stall for time, I was looking for our updates to Patreon, which we have here. It looks like we have no new patrons, and we are at one of our lower points. And it's all right. People actually have money that they want to spend on other things, and it's not up to us how they want to spend their money. But if you choose to spend money and you want to use it on us, we will gladly take it. But Andres and I are looking to go to BlizzCon, and I know that summer is always, wedding season. So this just normally is something that we kind of understand happens. But if you can and you can support us, it doesn't have to be at the highest level, but it does help. Every little dollar helps us get to BlizzCon, helps us get those interviews, helps us cover our bottom line. Andres, do you want to cover any of this?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, supporting the show monetarily definitely helps us out a lot. If you guys can afford the extra dollar here and there per episode, we really, really appreciate it. It's definitely not required. We do this because we love it and we will continue to do it. We started this making $0 and we just did it because we thought it was cool. We just think it's super awesome that some of you do choose to support us in this way. It has helped us come a long way. It has helped us gear ourselves up to keep doing this for the long term. And yeah, keep doing more projects like updating the website, adding more features to it. Like we said at the top of the show, we would love to add interactive archive to it where you can just easily get to all of the going deeps, easily be able to see them by hero with cool pictures or something. All these little projects and stuff really help out when you guys help us out financially. So if you want to do that, patreon.com is the way to do it. You can go to patreon.com/OmnicLab and you'll find all of our projects there.
And if you guys want to support us in a different way, you can support us on iTunes by leaving us a 5-star iTunes review that we can read on the show. This has been one of the longest dry patches we've had in a while, which, again, it's summer. People are probably not even listening to podcasts. I've had reports of lots of our student listeners out there that are working jobs that are either jumping full into the podcast scene and others that are jumping full out of it because they have a lot of free time. So it just happens. And there's also a lot of new things out there. Like there's a new Destiny thing coming in September. There's a new WoW game that Andres and I have been playing. There's all kinds of cool stuff that is coming. So if you want to support us, please leave us an iTunes review and we'll read it on the show. Last up, if you guys want to find us on merch, we have not talked about this at all, but we do have merch. Believe it or not, you can get coffee mugs and t-shirts and hoodies, and I think we even have a tote bag on there. So you guys can go check out some cool stuff on our merch site. The link is in our website as well as our show notes for every episode. Just a reminder at the bottom of the show, you guys can join game night on the 31st. It will be starting at any time that we have enough people that want to participate and are in a game night channel. There's no start time. So just join in. If you're there and there are other people, you can play with them, and game night has started for you. So join the Discord, discord.me/OmnicLab. And if you can't find it, just click the link in the description. If you guys are on YouTube, you guys can support us there. You can also support us on Twitch at twitch.tv/OmnicLab. You can give us your Amazon Prime subs and give us that nice freebie that you have as an Amazon Prime user. You can do that through Twitch Prime. That's going to do it for the show. Andres, where can people find you if they're looking for you when you're not coding?
That's going to become a little more scarce coming up. But if you want to find me, you can always find me on Twitter at iPlayGames. You spell out the IPLAI Games. And then next week, I'll be coming back to Owl Recap. Bob and Mel held down the fort this week because I was actually trying to not smash my head trying to learn Python. But next week, I will be back. So if you guys are into Overwatch League and want to keep up with the World Cup and all the events that happen during All-Star Weekend, feel free to join us there.
If you guys want to find me, I'm on the Twitterverse as the tag Not Rob. You can also find me on Instagram with the same tag. And if you are curious about Hearthstone and you want to hear more about cards, we released some lore sections this week about Warcraft lore regarding a Part 2 Gul'dan and a Ner'zhul episode this last week on Velens because we had to cancel. But this week we should be back, and we have a special guest from Fade to Karma joining us, and is a very strong player who is also female, and we're really excited to have more females in the pro scene and the pro streaming scene. So I'm excited to have her on the show this week. And if you guys like tabletop gaming, check out my Concept Craft thing where we talk about our D&D sessions with my wife. And if you guys are playing Alliance like Andres, you guys can go to the corner and stay away because this is for the Horde, and you guys can come play with me instead at really weird hours in the morning. I had somebody from Velens Chosen already talk to me about that. But if you guys are playing WoW, let us know. If you're on Alliance, hit up Andres. If you're on Horde, hit me up.
If you're a gentleman of fine taste, you can hit me up. If you're a savage, you can hit up Rob.
Hey, I'm okay with being a hard savage. Let's do that. All right, guys. Remember, don't be a lab rat, be a scientist. We'll see you guys next week, and hopefully we'll have some more news regarding BlizzCon within the next couple weeks. See you guys.
Hey, we got some Alliance buddies over here. D-Dubs. Thanks to everyone in the chat. Mr. Mars, good to see you as always.
Mr. Mars.
Mr. Sadistic. I was actually thinking about it. I don't have tickets for it, but I might end up going one of the days if I can find a way to get a ticket. My girlfriend wanted to go, so might be there.
I also forgot Pokemon streaming every single season of Pokemon on Twitch right now.
Oh yeah, the marathon. Yeah.
That's crazy. They're still in season 1. 9 seasons. Or no, it's 19 seasons. More seasons than One Piece.
Bye guys.
Bye guys.
Thanks for coming.